You're 17 years old, unemployed and standing on a street corner in St. Petersburg when someone offers you $500 to deliver a package. You don't ask what's inside. You know better. That one decision determines whether you stay disposable muscle forever or start climbing a ladder that ends with your face on Interpol's most wanted list. The Russian Bratva doesn't recruit through job postings. It finds you when you're desperate, angry, and willing to prove you're not afraid of anything, including prison. Level 1, the Shestyorka. The word translates to 6, which tells you everything about where you rank. You're the lowest card in the deck. Expendable, replaceable, one of dozens of young men running errands for people whose real names you may never learn. Your job is simple: deliver messages, stand watch outside meetings, carry cash, collect small debts from men who are already scared enough to pay once they see who sent you. On paper, it barely looks like organized crime. In reality, you're being tested every day. You make maybe $1,000 a month, sometimes less, sometimes nothing if the brigade doesn't need you. But money isn't the point yet. You're learning how this world works. You're watching how older men handle disrespect, how they speak without raising their voices, how they make people nervous just by standing in the room too long. Nobody gives you the rules. You absorb them. Never talk to police, never show weakness, never make your boss repeat himself, never create problems you can't solve. The street is a classroom, and every interaction is an exam. Most Shestyorkas disappear within a year. They get arrested and cooperate, they panic, they run, or they make one stupid mistake and vanish in ways nobody investigates very hard. The ones who last aren't always the strongest. They're the ones who learn fast, stay quiet, and understand that in this world, loyalty matters more than charm and silence matters more than ambition. By 19, you've been running with the same crew long enough that people stop seeing you as a kid. You haven't been arrested yet, which means you're either smart or lucky, probably both. Your brigadier starts trusting you with bigger tasks, larger collections, more sensitive deliveries, meetings where actual business gets discussed. You're not part of the conversation, but you're in the room now, and that means you're being measured. One night, a shop owner refuses to pay. He says he's already paying too many people. You watch 3 men explain the economics of refusal with a baseball bat and a broken wrist. Nobody tells you this is training. It doesn't have to be. Level 2, the Bovik. One day your brigadier stops calling you kid and starts calling you Bovik. Soldier, fighter. There's no ceremony, no paperwork. Just more responsibility and more danger. Now you're part of the enforcement arm. When someone stops paying, you remind them. When a debtor thinks private security will protect him, you show him the limits of private security. When a rival crew starts asking questions in your neighborhood, you make sure they stop asking. You run with 5 or 6 men who move as a unit. The work is direct. Collections, intimidation, punishments, security. The money jumps to $3,000 a month, sometimes 5 if there's a major operation. Enough to dress better, enough to stop looking desperate, enough that people in your district know not to test you. But money still isn't the real reward. The real reward is reputation. Within the Bratva, reputation is survival. Your brigadier gives you a businessman who's 6 months behind on protection. He's hired 2 former soldiers to guard his office. You go in anyway with 2 other Boviks and make it clear that payroll security is not the same thing as protection. He pays before the meeting ends. You bring every ruble back. You don't skim. Men have died for less. Violence is part of the job, but random violence is for idiots. Everything has to mean something. Too much violence brings police. Too little makes you look weak. You're learning the balance that separates organized fear from street chaos. And sooner or later, prison comes for everybody. At 22, you're arrested for assault after putting a businessman in the hospital. There are witnesses. The police are suddenly very interested. Your brigadier tells you not to worry. The organization will take care of your family while you're inside. This isn't generosity. It's structure. A system that expects prison has already built prison into the business model. You're sentenced to 4 years. Level 3, the brigadier. You don't get the title in prison, but this is where you become the kind of man who can hold it. Russian prisons don't rehabilitate criminals, they refine them. The guards control the gates, the inmates control everything that matters. This is where the mythology of the underworld stops sounding like mythology. You learn who the Vori v Zakon are, thieves in law, the aristocracy of the criminal world, men whose authority extends far beyond the prison walls, men other criminals defer to instinctively, men whose bodies carry histories written in ink. You study the tattoos first. Stars on the shoulders, a declaration that they'll never bow to authority. Cathedrals marking years served. Skulls, crosses, saints' knives, all part of a language outsiders can't read and insiders never misunderstand. You're not allowed to wear any of it. Not yet. A man who claims rank he hasn't earned can have those tattoos cut off with broken glass. The code is stricter than anything you learned on the street. No cooperation with authorities. No serving the state, no pretending to be something you're not. The old rules leave no room for confusion and even less room for forgiveness. So you keep your head down and prove useful. You settle disputes among younger inmates, you know when to hit and when to talk. You show discipline, you show memory, you show that prison didn't break you or soften you, it made you more valuable. You're released after 3 years for good behaviour, though nobody in your world would ever call it that. Your brigadier picks you up himself. That matters. On the drive back into the city, he tells you things have changed. He's expanded. More territory, more men, more opportunities. He wants you running a crew beneath him. That's your promotion. Not because you survived the street, because you survived prison without losing your place. Now you're a brigadier, not a boss yet, but no longer just muscle. You control a small crew of Boviks and a rotating layer of Shestyorkas. You assign collections. You oversee local extortion. You decide who gets hit, who gets warned, and who gets one last chance. If your crew brings in money and avoids chaos, you rise. If they get sloppy, it's your fault. This is where most men stall out. They can enforce orders. They can't build systems. They can scare people. They can't manage people. Leadership inside the Bratva means more than being feared. It means generating income, containing risk, and staying loyal while every temptation around you is pushing in the opposite direction. Level 4. The Avtoritet. By 29, you've proven you can do all 3. Your superiors give you control of a commercial district, multiple crews, multiple income streams, protection rackets, loan collections, illegal gambling, logistics. Business owners pay because they understand the alternative. If a few resist, the lesson is never immediate and never random. A broken window, a vandalized truck, employees harassed on their way home. Pressure applied slowly enough to feel inevitable. Then someone gives in and everyone else suddenly remembers the arrangement. Your district brings in serious money, not scraps, real revenue, enough that you can buy a legitimate business, a car wash, maybe a warehouse, maybe a small construction company that explains your lifestyle and launders what the street can't. You move into a decent apartment. You drive a Mercedes that's expensive but not stupid. You've learned that successful criminals don't look loud. Loud men get remembered. Your crew respects you because you're disciplined. You pay them on time. You don't take cuts you didn't earn. You don't humiliate men for entertainment. In a legitimate company that would be called basic management. In this world, it makes you exceptional. The higher-ups notice, not because they like you, because you're useful. For the first time, you're invited into political conversations. Not politics in the public sense. Internal politics, territory, alliances. Whether conflict with a rival group is worth the police attention it would bring. Whether a business should be squeezed harder or absorbed quietly. Whether a local official can be bought or needs leverage instead. You meet a Sovietnik, an old advisor who has been in the life since the Soviet era. He asks about your crews, your discipline, your philosophy on pressure. He wants to know whether you think like a manager or like a thug. The distinction matters. Thugs make headlines. Managers build empires. A week later, your authority expands again. More men, more territory, more money. But this is also where the air gets thinner. Every move now creates enemies. Men below you resent your power. Men above you watch for weakness. Law enforcement starts hearing your name more often. Nothing is loud yet, but the walls are getting closer. Level 5, the Vor v Zakon. You're 34 when the offer comes, not an application, not a campaign, an offer. 3 established Vori approach you quietly. They've been watching for years, your prison record, your discipline, your leadership, your loyalty to the code. They believe you're ready to be crowned as a thief in law. This is not a promotion in the corporate sense. It's initiation into the deepest layer of the system, a title that carries more weight than raw money ever could. The conditions are absolute. You must reject cooperation with the state completely. No informing, no government service, no compromise with authority. You are binding yourself to a code older than most of the men enforcing it. Break it, and the punishment is death if you're lucky, mutilation if you're not. The ceremony happens in private. No theatrics, no speeches, just men whose names carry weight across prisons, cities, and borders, asking whether you understand what this means, whether you will live by the code until you die. You say yes. They vote. Unanimous. Now the entire criminal world reads you differently. You can feel it immediately. Men who once negotiated with you now defer. Disputes that would have ended in blood are brought to you first. Your word settles things because your rank places you above ordinary ambition. You're no longer just running operations. You're part of a brotherhood that arbitrates power itself. Then come the tattoos. Stars on the shoulders, cathedrals across the chest, symbols earned through prison, loyalty, and risk. These aren't decorations. They're declarations. A permanent record written into your skin. In the old world, they made you impossible to hide. In the modern world, many powerful men avoid them for exactly that reason. But tradition still matters, and so does the message. The message is simple. You belong to the code now more than you belong to yourself. That power sounds glorious from far away. Up close, it's isolating. You can never be ordinary again. Every friendship becomes political. Every favor becomes a debt. Every conversation might be a test. Men don't just respect you now, they measure you. Level 6, the Pakhan. The old boss dies at 67 after 2 decades in power. A heart attack, they say. Maybe that's true. Maybe someone helped history move a little faster. In your world, both explanations can exist at once. His death leaves a vacuum, and vacuums in criminal organizations don't stay empty for long. There are multiple claimants, but only a few serious ones. You're one of them. The older candidates think like gangsters from the 1990s, territory, street pressure, public violence. They still believe fear alone can hold an empire together. You understand something they don't. The future belongs to the men who can blend criminal enterprise with legitimate systems. Real estate, import-export firms, construction, hospitality, shell companies, offshore movement, political access bought quietly instead of demanded loudly. When the council meets, that's the case you make. Less chaos, more structure, less heat, more money, fewer street wars, more influence over the institutions that decide who gets investigated and who gets ignored. They choose you. Now you're Pakhan. Over 200 men answer to your organization across multiple cities. Millions move through your network every year. Some of your businesses are fronts, some are genuinely profitable. Some politicians know exactly who you are and shake your hand anyway. You employ lawyers, accountants, fixers, couriers, and men whose only job is making problems disappear before they become headlines. From the outside, it looks like victory, penthouse, cars, tailored suits, security, respect, access to rooms most people will never even know exist. From the inside, it feels like suffocation. You sleep 4 hours a night, you trust almost nobody. Every decision can start a war, trigger a betrayal, or bring just enough law enforcement pressure to collapse something you spent 20 years building. Men flatter you to your face and position against you in private. The code that elevated you has now sealed you inside it. There is no retirement plan for a Pakhan, no graceful exit, no beach house and memoir. You leave this life in handcuffs in a coffin, or not at all. You started at 17 with nothing but desperation and a willingness to prove yourself. Now you sit at a table where decisions affect entire neighborhoods, businesses, prisons, and governments. The path from Shestyorka to Pakhan isn't a ladder you climb through ambition alone. It's a filter. A machine that removes everyone too weak, too reckless, too soft, or too stupid to survive its logic. Every rung took something from you. First your innocence, then your freedom, then your conscience, then your ability to trust anyone completely. And when you finally reach the top, you realize the system never built you for power. It built you for captivity. Somewhere in St. Petersburg right now, another 17-year-old is standing on a street corner and someone is offering him $500 to deliver a package. He thinks he's starting an adventure. He has no idea he's stepping into a machine designed to consume him.